you'd like to follow along, the scripture reading will be out of John chapter 7, verses 37 and 38. Now on the last day, the great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water."
Appreciate everyone able to make it out this morning. And I'll do my best not to make this lesson very lengthy. I'm going to make it simple for you, so you're welcome. That was not because of the weather and maybe the lack of people getting out. It's just what I'd already planned and some thought. And there's times where, a lot of the gentlemen know this, you put together a lesson, you really spend a lot of hours and a lot of scriptures and in-depth things, and it's great, right? And we should on those things. But sometimes scriptures are simple, right? God's message is meant to be simple in its tale. So sometimes lessons, deep diving into those things, it's on the surface, it is simple. And as you consider some verses in the Bible that just seem simple, sometimes we overlook maybe its importance. John 3:16, for example, you could read through that and so much that we miss really the impact and the meaning. And sometimes it loses that sense of thought and power and truthful meaning and what God is declaring to us and the hope that we have through that verse, right? And it's quoted so much that sometimes it doesn't even do anything for you because you can recite it yourself, right? You may not even think about that verse. When's the last sermon? I didn't look at your last several sermon lists, but when's the last time I heard a sermon specifically on John 3:16? And sometimes we don't do those sermons sometimes because we know that verse so much, it might seem boring to us, or we just know it so well, or again, we just maybe not sure what to say around that because it is, again, so simple, but yet it's so powerful. And so there's another set of verses I thought the same thing about, and those actually come out of Matthew chapter 11. Make sure everything works this morning here. In Matthew chapter 11, actually I'm going to have to fix something because I can't see anything on my screen, so it's not copying over here, so you have to give me half a second. So, like literally I have a black screen, so I could turn around and read it with you guys, but there it goes. You're on verse 25. All right, I'm there with you. All right. So Matthew chapter 11 and verse 25 through 30, we'll specifically target verses 28 through 30. But he says, "At this time Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, this way was well-pleasing in your sight. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, nor does anyone know the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son wills to reveal him. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, again, you may have read verses 28 through 30 several times. You might even be able to quote those things. But I have a challenge that I want you to think about. And I thought the same thing about myself when I was doing a Bible study at home not too long ago when I ran through this verse, right? What is Jesus saying right off the bat? He's giving us an invitation. He says, come. But who is he giving the invitation to? Well, he says here, all who are weary and heavy laden. Now, that might imply anybody in this world, because in reality, we're all at one point in our lives weary and heavy laden. Just like John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world all, that God has given His Son to all of us, right? But not everyone will receive Christ. Not everyone will believe in Him. Not everyone will come to Him, be devoted to Him, and live for Him. In the same way, when you look at this verse, he says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden. Everyone is weary and heavy laden. The context here of weary and heavy laden implies that we are in deep sorrow, that we have some sort of pain spiritually. Heavy laden, where there's a burden upon our shoulders, a weight that we cannot bear. The weight that he's talking about here is not just the weight of life, right? Not just take up your cross and follow me type thing. Maybe it's a little bit of that. He's talking about the sin that we bear in our life. It's the challenge that we bear because of the sins in our lives. Now, don't lose me now, for those who have been Christians for X amount of years, have been baptized or whatever, because this applies to all of us. And the reason why it applies to all of us, or it could apply to us, is because maybe at some point in your life, or maybe you have gone your entire life from the day that you were baptized, maybe that you are still weary and heavy laden. And you don't know why. Or you have moments in your life that you're weary and heavy laden and you don't know why. And I'm not talking about the daily stress of life, where we have so much going on in our life we just cannot bear those things and get through those things, right? Chaos, right? Just children, work, and family and all those things. I'm not talking about that, and that's not what Jesus is talking about. Jesus is talking about something spiritually here, that we struggle day in and day out. And I'm not talking about maybe a specific sin or a group of sins, but just a cluster of something in your life. And that God is saying, look, those who are weary and heavy laden, I'm inviting you, I'm welcoming you to come to me. Now here's the challenge. If you're still weary and heavy laden, have you ever, did you ever, or are you currently, did you come to Jesus? Because if we had, we really wouldn't be weary and heavy laden. Because what he's talking about here is not some futuristic thing that one day when he comes he's going to provide for us. He's talking about it now. And so again, I go through my life and I'm saying, why am I so weary and why am I so heavy laden? I'm going to pause for just a moment and I'm going to go to John chapter 7, and we'll come back to this for just a moment. In John 7 verse 32, the Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and the Pharisees sent officers to seize him. Therefore Jesus said, for a little while longer I am with you, then I go to him who sent me. You will seek me and will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. Now think about what Jesus said here in verse 34. You will seek me, you will not find me, and where I am, you can't come. Wait a minute here. Does that not contradict what Jesus just said? In any other thing that Jesus ever said? In all the other types of invitations that Jesus has inviting people to come to him? And he's specifically talking to the Pharisees here. You can't come. You can't seek me. You can't find me. You're not, in other words, you're not invited. You're not allowed. And he's saying that specifically to the Pharisees. But why did he say that? When you continue on for just a moment, the Jews then said to one another, where does this man intend to go, that we will not find him? He is not intending to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks, is he? What is this statement that he said, you will seek me and will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come? Now on the last day of the great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. Now wait a minute. He just told the Pharisees that you can seek me, but you're not going to find me, and where I am, you can't come at all. And then he says here, in verse 37, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Now, were the Pharisees not thirsty? Well, they were, but they didn't know it. And their thirst had nothing to do with God and Jesus. Their thirst was all about themselves, all about the works and striving to get to heaven. They were all about the fact that we have Abraham as our father. We're just automatically going to go to heaven. We have our circumcision. We're doing things of the old law, the celebrations and the ceremonies, and we're already going to get there. We don't even need Jesus. Well, they're not longing and thirsting for Jesus. But what is Jesus implying here? For those who are thirsty, those who long for something, those who recognize that they're starving spiritually, Jesus says, I'm the one who can and who will provide that for you. In verse 38, he who believes in me. Again, the Pharisees weren't believing in him. who He was, the Messiah, the purpose that He came here to die for their sins. They didn't have sins that need to be remitted, according to them. So no, they weren't going to seek Him. He was standing right in front of them, and they couldn't see who He was. They weren't seeking Jesus. And where He was going, they cannot come because they're not willing to recognize who they are in their position relative to Him. And they weren't willing to pick up their cross, in other words, do whatever that needed to be done, spiritually, internally, emotionally, whatever it was, getting rid of their sins, and truly following the way of Christ. Hence, Jesus says, you can't come. It's not that they were not invited. It's that they wouldn't allow themselves to recognize their position and realize the invitation that Jesus was giving them upon the fact is they had to recognize their own humility and their own sins and turn from those things and then follow Him. Now, when you go back to Matthew 11, in our context here, He says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You ever feel like you've not been close to God at some point in your life? You ever feel like maybe it's gone for quite some time, or maybe it's ever since the day that you were baptized? You know, for some people, they never truly came to Christ. Even though they came up out of that water, this new creature, they believed in Him to some measure. They came forward. They got in the water. They come out as this new creature. And there's still things in their life that they never gave up. There's still habits. There's still addictions. There's still struggles and challenges that they never truly submitted those things to God and gave up. And in and day out, we find ourselves weary and heavy laden, and we lay down at night and we can't go to sleep. It's not because of all the stuff that we have going on in life. It's because we have financial challenges. And we have financial challenges because we don't know how to deal with our monies. We have relationship challenges because we don't know how to deal with relationships the way that Ephesians 5 talks about. We have so many challenges that revolve around spiritual natures. It may not be some blatant sin, right? Just some deliberate sin out there in life. But there are still things about us characteristically as those who are followers of Christ that maybe we've never really gotten to the Word and learned those things. Or we know those things and we never fully put those things into practice. And so we still struggle so much day in and day out, and we don't know why. Yes, life will be chaotic and life will always throw things at you. But it's the things that I believe that we can control. Again, yes, there's a lot of things in life we can't control. There are some financial things that come our way and we didn't expect those things. We didn't create those things. Sometimes there are relationship challenges that just happen, but how do we work through those things and get through those things? There's so many things that we deal with in life, again, we have no control of, medical challenges, those things, but it's how we receive those things and how we get through those things. That Jesus is saying, I want you to come to me. We deal with so much on our own. We may go to friends, we may go to social media, self-help books, but we never really turn to our Bible for the answer. We may never really bend in knee to God in prayer and really divulge our heart unto Him and coming to Him in a sense that we are willing to receive whatever it is. You know, Jesus obviously said, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. Not my will, but your will be done. Have we ever really fallen to our knees and said those same things to our God? Have we truly come to Him in the sense that we're willing to take the burden of our life and put it in His lap and let Him take it? Because what does He say to us here? Come to me all who are weary and heavy laden. He says, I will give you rest. It's, again, not some futuristic thing when we get to heaven. He's saying, even today, that if you bring these things to me, I will give you rest. And He says in verse 29, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. The second time in 2 verses, He says, you will find rest. But the recognition is that we are truly carrying this yoke, this huge piece of, if you will, farm equipment that puts two animals together, and then it's a burden, it's a heavy thing that they have that they carry around. And we're carrying around so much heavy things in our life. And Jesus is saying, just give it to me. Release it. What's interesting about this is the fact is that Jesus is inviting us to Him as our King, as the Creator, as our Father. And when you would ever, not that I have ever, approach the throne of a king, when I have betrayed that king, when I have denied that king, when I have cursed that king, when I have sinned against the laws that king has declared, and you would come before that king and you would bow down, you would be fearful. you would be trembling. You knew without a doubt that you would be sentenced to death. But our King is also our Father. And our King is also a God of love. And as He says, I want you to come to me. And when you do, He says, I want you to lay all these things here. In other words, the sin in your life, the challenges in your life, lay those things here. Why? Because I am gentle and humble in heart. In other words, He's willing to take not only the sins and the burden of your life, He's willing to forgive you for those things. It's not the fact that we are just carrying something around that we put on ourselves and that was it. No, what we're carrying around in life is things that we have done against our God. And the same God recognizes those things, welcomes us to Him. And it's amazing that we have not truly brought our lives to His throne. And we're carrying around so many things in life, and we don't recognize the fact that my God is gentle and humble in heart. Yes, He's a big God. Yes, He's a wrathful God. Should we choose not to turn to Him? The Pharisees obviously will find out that one day, right? He's a jealous God. He's a God who can put forth anything that He wants and just turn us to dust. But the same God who has all that power has the power to forgive us, to wrap His arms around us, to relieve us of the things in our life that we carry day in and day out. And He says, and as you do this, as you come to me, as you release this heavy laden, this burden, He says, I'll give you rest. And then what I want you to do is this, as you come to me that I am gentle and humble in heart, I want you to learn from me. So many times that we're still so burdened with this heaviness and this laziness because we never truly learned from Him. As we learn who He is, as we do a Bible study, as we open up our Bibles, we learn all about Him. How amazing God He is, how big He is, how loving He is, and all the things that He has done for us, and all the things that He will do for us. We learn our position in life, who we are to be as a man or a woman, and in our relationships, and how we deal with money, and how we deal with conflict, and other things in life. And we learn all those things. And you might say again, why is it so much that I'm so heavy laden and I'm so burdened with the things in my life? Because maybe we never truly opened up our Bible to learn about our God. We never found out the answers to get through things in life. We never gone to Him for a sense of encouragement or peace or comfort as we do go through those things. And as you find yourselves going through the challenges in life, you quickly remember the verses that God says about Himself and about us. And all those things come to mind over and over again. And again, those things, you may not ever get those things relieved out of your life. Right? The challenges of this life sometimes. But we know we can get through those things because we have the peace in our heart, because we know what our God has declared. And the rest that we're so easily desiring, we so desire so much in our hearts, He says it twice here, I will give you rest. It's interesting to think that we strive for our own version, our own type of rest. Yes, we go on vacations and we sit on the beach and we watch the ocean and we just let the work life and the life just sweep away for just a moment. We relax. And we go to bed and we sleep a little bit easier on vacations and stuff like that. And then we go back to life, right? And everything is just all chaotic again, right? As we go through life, as we recognize day in and day out, we will always have those challenges. But the peace that we have and the rest that we have every single day is knowing that Satan, this life, has not, will not conquer us. And we have all the control to stop those things from happening. We have all the control of our life. And it really is as simple as what Jesus says here. Come to me. Just come to me. And in verse 30 it says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The hardest thing about this whole context is the very beginning. He just says, come to me. And when you do this, what does He say? I will give you rest. I will help you learn of me. I am gentle and humble in heart. I am loving and forgiving of you and the things that you have done. And I will give you rest for your souls. And if you take my yoke, okay, if you come to me and receive me, I guarantee you that your life will be so much easier. Again, you will have the challenges in life. It's not just taking everything away from your life and now we just stand here and we wait and there is no challenges in life. It's again through His Word, He helps us, He teaches us, He encourages us to get through all those things. In other words, what is His requirement? To the Pharisees, they thought that they would have to do all these works and all these sacrifices and all these things to get to heaven, and all that stuff was a waste of time. But what did Jesus tell us? He says, come to me. And when you do, I will do all these things for you. And what is the ongoing requirement of you? Right? Is it difficult? Is it stressful? Is it demanding? For some, yes. Because some are so engrossed in the sin in their life, the addictions that they have, and it's very, very difficult for them to give those things up. But that difficulty is upon you, not Him. He's not asking you anything difficult beyond that which you cannot control or that which you cannot do. Now, on your own, absolutely it's difficult. If you're out there trying to say, you know what, the burden that you're asking me to do, Jesus, is difficult and it's tough. Why is it difficult and tough? It's difficult and tough because you didn't come to me. You didn't seek me. You didn't find me. You didn't ask me for help. You didn't come together with your church family and encourage one another and build one another up and help each other get to heaven. I know this lesson may seem really elementary or basic, but the one thing I want you to do when you leave here this morning is I want you to take a look at your life as a whole and say, everything that's going on in my life, why is it there? Is it there because things just happen that I have no control over? Or maybe some of the things that are going on is because of the things that I've created, that I've inflicted. The initial statement that Jesus is giving here, you might say, is predominantly to someone who is just learning about Christ. They're just getting an understanding of who He is. As He came upon the scene here, He's teaching them all who He was, all the things that He can do, and helping us understand our position. And so then it might seem like an elementary, basic, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, I'll give you rest. Okay, absolutely. I want you to know who I am. I'm a gentle and humble God. I'm an amazing God. I'm not a fearful God that you should be afraid of. You can actually come to me, and when you do that, I'm going to teach you. You're going to learn from me. You're going to learn all about me. You're going to learn all about yourself and all the things that you need to do spiritually. And then when it's all said and done, the things that you're going to continue to do is not a burden. It's actually easy when it's all said and done. But if you've been a Christian for 5 years, 10 years, 1 day, 50 years, and if you look at your life and you find yourself that everything is a burden, it's still difficult, it's still tough. And I'm not talking about, again, just the basic ways of life that Satan out there gives us, but I'm talking about your everyday part of your life. It's still so difficult for you. Then I want to ask yourself, are you truly coming to Christ? Have you truly given your life to Him in such a way that you're willing to take up your cross and follow Him, that you're willing to do the things that He's asked us to do, the things that He said, be devoted to Him, recognizing He's our God and He's our King and He deserves all the praise and the glory and the honor, all those things. It's as simple as that. I'm not here to get deep in your lives as far as all the things that you do good and all the things that you do bad, right? It's for you to just take a moment and do a self-reflection of your life and say, why is it that I still feel so emotionally challenged? Why do I feel so physically challenged in my life? And it's like, have I ever truly given my life to Christ? And you know the answer to that question. You can't be blind about it. If you think about your life and in just a given week, how many times did you pray to God this week? How many times did you pray to Him on a specific day? How many times did you even open up your Bible this week to even read about His Word? How many times did you think about spiritual things? How many conversations did you have about spiritual things? Now, conversely to that, how much time and energy did you give to all other things? And it's not just about our time and our energy, because that's a start. And it helps us to know where our heart is and where our devotion is and those type of things. But how much time and energy do we give to selfishness, to worldly pleasures, to worldly sins and those type of things? And we make time for those things because we wanted to do those things. We had the desire to do those things, the fleshly desire to do those things. And in all the challenges that we have that's going on, whether it's financial challenge, relationship challenge, How much effort did you give this past week or month or year to try to fix those things? Yes, they're there. We recognize they're there. And we spend all this time and this energy going through those things, and we're stressful and we're chaotic and we can't sleep. But if we ever just said, you know what? Enough's enough. And I'm going to fix this. And I'm going to ask God to help me do that. And I'm going to get in His Word to find out to do it. And I'm going to go fix that. And again, our lives are so full of things that we just deal with every single day. And we never find out an answer. We never get the relief. We never get the rest that we wish we had. We can't even stop and just take a deep breath and just for a moment be relieved of anything positive sometimes. When Jesus makes it that simple. It's like the hardest thing for us to realize and the hardest thing for do, but Jesus makes it that simple. And the first step is just come to me. I would encourage you that if you have challenges that revolve around not just yourself but others, whether it's your spouse or kids, other family members, the approach to Jesus, come to me. Do it individually, yes, but do it together. To face the challenges face on. So we have this challenge and we're going to get through it. And I know how to do that. And they look back at you and they say, how? This is what we got to do. And let's do it together. Okay. That's the first step. That's the start. Because it's one of the greatest encouragements that we have today. Not just futuristically in heaven one day. It's the greatest thing that God is willing to give us today that we have readily available if we just receive it. Come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. With the invitations for anyone that has not given their life to Christ, so if there's someone that just needs help, needs prayer, that says, you know what, Kevin, you're right. I haven't truly come to Christ. And I want to do that. I want to kind of recommit my heart, my dedication, and I need the help of my brothers and sisters in Christ to do that. If that's for you this morning, may you come forward now as we stand and sing.